What's up, everybody, and welcome to our live podcast, Themes and Things. My name is Jules. I'm joined by my good buddy Merlin, and today is our very first episode. Welcome, Merlin. How are you, bro?
I'm good and you gaslighting the audience, pretending we didn't just do another
This is not for them. This is for us mostly.
mostly for us. No, I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to chat about some themes and things, right?
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. So let's jump right in. Trailers. That's what we got. We got lots of trailers, specifically fantasy ones. So let's run them down. What did we get this week? And before that, a little bit, we got the
Okay,
House
yeah,
of
because
Dragons trailer.
House of the Dragon. Oh, that looks so good. But I'm so concerned. I have many concerns and heights. House of the Dragon. Yeah, it's because the actors sell it, eh? It's done so good. They sell it so well. It's a little bit I've seen of the actors. I'm like, they just believe what they're talking, and they're just into this character, and it draws me in so much, and I can't.
You don't have any residual hate for the Game of Thrones
This is what I want to
ending.
get to. This is what I get. Is it the same guys? I didn't see. Is it the same director?
Not actually sure, but if it was the same, let's look that up. Because if it was the same two guys, I feel like they would have paraded those names around, or maybe they wouldn't parade those names
Yes,
around because
because
of a bad taste in everyone's mouths.
yeah, I already know these guys can't, um, stick at the landing. So I wouldn't trust it if it was them. This is what I'm getting with this. Is like they want to tell me this prequel story, but the story I already cared about had kind of like this weird ending, and now I don't trust them to tell stories anymore.
That is the most civil I've ever heard someone discuss the Game of
Yes,
Thrones.
I know.
Disappointing is not something you hear, bro. It's always, no, that fucking shit sucks. I hate it.
No, I'm giving them chops where it's due. As I said, as I opened, the actors they got for it. They're drawing me, and I care about the story. I don't even care that it's connected to the rest of Westeros, which is a major theme for me at the moment. Um, it's I'm so on the fence about the House of the Dragon or
Yeah.
the House of Dragons, the House of the Dragon, House of the
Uh,
Dragon.
House of the Dragon. Yeah.
Game of
It's not.
Thrones, double point, House of the Dragon.
I think it's actually just House of the Dragon.
Yeah.
Um, but with the Game of Thrones, I don't think it's a subtitle. I'm not actually sure. So it's not created by the same guys. George R. R. Martin is still involved, but it's the showrunner is a guy called Brian Condal. I have no idea who that is. I'm not going to look it up either. He'll
Okay.
have to prove himself on the basis of this show, I guess. Speaking of
Yeah.
shows we're not on the fence about, we also got a full-length trailer for Rings of Power. Exciting
Oh
stuff.
my
If you like seeing things and talking about seeing things.
Triggered. No, I've been watching the Rings of Power trailers where they give us a little more. And the last one that they've released is actually you get a sense about what the story at least the themes in the story is about. It's about the waning of the world, and the dying of the light and the elves losing their eternal paradise. And that, like now that they are giving us a little bit more, I'm a little bit more open to it.
Okay.
So, see, the the thing was that I couldn't understand why they would want to tell the story, or why they were creating something in Tolkien's world if they just wanted to tell a contemporary fantasy story. Just make your own world, make your own story. That was my original
Do you
thought of
think
it.
that'll work though? Because I actually want to get to that when we talk about the Dungeons and Dragons trailer. Because fantasy, every couple of years, it feels like Hollywood goes, "Let's give it another shot. We're just gonna try this fantasy thing again." Because they don't sell. Like fantasy movies don't sell on their own. It's a very niche market. People that are into fantasy, like it's not your mainstream
It,
audience. And I
it,
think
ye-
connecting it to something like Lord of the Rings makes it a bit more approachable. I guess it makes it a bit more. I've recognized that thing, but instead saying, listen, here's some dwarves and some elves in a world that you have to figure out within the 2 hour runtime. And it's, people really generally That you get what I'm saying? We're like, it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Okay, so well, that's not fair to say. We're living in a post Game of Thrones world and a post MCU world. Superheroes and fantasy things are not for nerds anymore. You
That's
know,
true. No,
we
you make a
all
valid point.
we all have a little bit of nerd in us, or at least you can talk to more people about these things than you could have when we were growing up. You know,
That's very
uh,
true, though. Because,
yeah,
like, even remember, like, the Aragon movie, all of them, none of them reached the successes of Lord of the Rings.
I forgot about
Yeah.
that.
And there's been a Dungeons of Dragon movie. Top of my head, there's a fantasy movie called Seventh Son that nobody has seen except for the people that binge watch Netflix stuff.
Okay.
So I
Okay,
think
so
I hear what you're saying. Like maybe today, because Rick and Morty as well. This is an interesting thing about Multiverse of Madness. The writers of Multiverse of Madness said that they looked at Rick and Morty and they went, "Those guys are creating universes, setting a story within that universe in a 20-minute episode. Like you don't have to have like 4 or 5 movies explaining a world, or like Avatar, for instance. Like Avatar doesn't have to be this thing. We all accept like, okay, cool, this is a different world. This is loosely based on these rules, and here's the story within that. Anime, for instance, anime is also, I feel, growing in popularity lately because more and more people are watching anime.
mm, mm,
So
mm,
we're
mm.
definitely getting into the vibe of, we all understand like you can in 20 minutes explain a world and set a story in it. So doing that in 2 hours is easier. But again, like I feel fantasy movies specifically, if it's not tied to a recognizable IP, people don't care. Like people aren't gonna pay money to try a new thing.
And it is true because we if somebody pitches a generic fantasy story to me, I would just reply with, "Why would I watch that? I already have Lord of the Rings," which is my
Yeah,
my. Re-
absolutely. That's true. It's like that's very cute, bro, but we've seen this.
I know, but I'm a rare species in that I can watch the good thing. I can watch it over and over and over again, and it will not spoil to me. It is as good the first time as it is the 100th time. But that is, I know, not something everybody feels, and not everybody works like that.
No,
I'm
definitely. No, you
you
are the hard fantasy fan. That is true. But that's also what I'm saying. Like maybe you are a little bit biased here.
with this thing.
Yeah.
Um, That's hard, man. This is a difficult. Why I warned you about the rabbit hole for this thing is because this entire thing is kind of difficult in general. House of the Dragon, Dungeons and Dragons, and the Rings of Power share a similar thing. They share a similar kind of theme here now, is that it is a fantasy story from a recognizable IP, right? And then we ask ourselves, why is this story set in this IP? Why is it not set in another IP? Or why did you not create a new IP? Okay. Why do we keep um, recycling things like this? And
Because it does fall a little bit in the another thing based in the world we already know. Because there's tons of that. Even Tim Burton, as we speak, is making a Wednesday show based on Wednesday Adams, but it's just called Wednesday, and presumably will only follow her. Like what is that? You see what I'm saying? Is if it's a coming of age story about a weird girl, then you can do that in anything. You can just do it on its own.
yes,
Now it has to be connected to something, the Adams family
yeah. So
in this case.
we're sitting with these three things, and I have mixed feelings about them going into the start. And this is kind of one of also a weird thing is there's no exploring or wondering what this is going to be about because I know what House of the Dragon is about, or at least I know the world. I watched it.
Mm.
Lord of the Rings is the same, and Dungeons and Dragons is the same for me. It's all things that I've experienced already have an opinion on, and now you're slapping that on your story. And now I come in kind of skeptical and suspicious about it because are you going to
Um,
meet my expectations or my opinions I already have about different pieces of story or different legendarians or whatever you want to call them. Like,
No, definitely. Also,
yeah.
if you're going the Rings of Power route and you're taking a character like Galadriel, that is an intense. Like you, could you hear that? Could you hear me yelling in my?
No, you went missing there for a bit.
Okay, awesome. So the mute button does work. You don't want
Okay,
that
that's
because we're not
okay.
editing it out. It's all live. It's going in. But yeah, so what I was saying, so if you take a character like Galadriel, who like for the past 70 years or however long she's existed, that's a huge expectation. Like everyone, like we have a sense of who she is and what she ends up being. So if you do a prequel show, you not only have to make her believable in that world because we're getting a younger one and whatnot, you have to make who she becomes connected and believable as well. Because as far as I have it, Galadriel doesn't give much of a fuck about the world.
it's more rabbit holes.
But let's
So,
go. That's what podcasting
okay,
formats are.
so
This.
Galadriel does not give a fuck about the world in the same way that after a great heartbreak, you don't give a fuck about your ex. It is because of the
Okay,
pain she
okay.
has endured. The world that men are trying to save is already a shadow of the world she lived in, right? Already diminished, already fading. What they will save is still grief for her. She has already lost. Right? So
Okay,
that's
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 interesting. That changes it. Do you think that'll play a huge role in this or any role at all? Because
okay.
she
So
is, I'm not incorrect here, right? Like Galadriel is a little bit closed off. She doesn't help the fellowship. She's like, get out of my woods. Don't want you here.
she is, and she's kind of mixed. Kind of everything over the other than over the Misty Mountains gets a little bit more on the fence about the Fellowship, where everything before the Misty Mountains is a little bit more open. I know there's examples of monsters and things in the world before, but it's kind of I won't talk about that imagery. But yes, she is closed off. She's literally hiding in a comfy blanket from the
Okay.
world.
I
Right?
see what you mean. Do we know? So when is this set? The Rings of Power show. When is it set? First
The
age, right?
second during the I think it's the second age during the second age, um, and it will culminate in the end of Numenor. But they're taking a lot of different stories from a lot of different times and they're bringing it into a shorter time. So that's also one of the major changes is that they're shortening the epic
You
scope.
mean. So it's
Yes,
no longer hundreds and hundreds of years, or maybe
yes, it's
even
not going to be the
thousands.
slow pace that elves live by, but more of a faster pace that we men can comprehend. You know.
Oh, yes, of
Um,
course. We men.
yes.
Okay, yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah. Do you like that? I kind of like the fact that everything in Lord of the Rings. I like the fact that it took Frodo 17 years to get out the Shire. It really it imparts the impact of leaving his house for a Hobbit and what it does. I also
so
like the fact that elves are like they'll do the same thing for 6 months, bro, and that one thing is just painting a shed. They'll paint that shed for 500 years because they don't care because they know
okay,
time is on their side. Do you
but
agree or do you like the fact that do you think it's a wise decision to shorten the time scopes?
I just want to say, if you pass a shed like that, it will sing in Elfurial song. I'm just saying that's how you get that. I do like the epic scope of Middle Earth. I've a little bit of a confession to make that I like the movies more than I like the books. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I
definitely.
get what you're saying
and
with that.
and I appreciate some of the changes that they've made, and some of them I am sad about because, for instance, Fellowship of the Ring, I did like the kind of strange pace of it. It did create a more impending doom for the ring, I guess. But you can't put that in a movie. It's real boring. I would rather
Yeah. That's
chase
very
them
true.
through the
Yeah.
Shire, into Rivendell, through Khazad Dûm, into Lothlorien, over everything. You know, you want a little bit
Mm.
more cinema, and because you're working with this medium, you're not working with a piece of text. You have to do certain things to make it palatable.
Yes, no, very
People,
true.
yeah,
Fight sequences, you need to be
yeah,
chased, there needs to be
and
suspense. Yeah.
If it's condensing the timeline, that's fine. If it's changing the character of Aragorn so that he becomes more in line with the themes of the book, according to you, the director or whatever. But if you're thinking about these things in this way, of I'm doing these moves because of this medium, but also I'm trying to be respectful because I am making an adaptation. Now that is one of the major differences between Lord of the Rings and the Rings of Power. Lord of the Rings is an adaptation of a story. The Rings of Power is something they're creating out of the appendices, like little bits of
Yeah, no, you're
information.
absolutely correct. It's
Yes,
more, it's there's a lot more room. Obviously, there's
yes,
no one can go, but that didn't happen in the book. The
yes.
house wasn't really there by the dwarves in the book. That doesn't happen. No one can say shit like that. And so
Yeah.
maybe, but people are hating it though. They're not happy. People don't want to watch this, or everyone wants to watch this so they can talk cock about it afterwards. It sure does seem like that.
I feel at this point I will have to watch it so that I can be
Myself
like,
as well. I
at
also
least,
definitely have
you
to
know,
watch
at
it.
least say, okay, no, you know, the hype was wrong or the hype was right or whatever.
So you're still going in open-minded. You're going
I'm,
in. Let's.
I'm, I got into conversations with internet strangers this week on YouTube on the trailers, so um, I have a little bit of influence here, I guess. But one guy made the point because I'm lamented the fact that because she's now a strong female character, she has to fight. Even though she was already a strong female character because she can, you know, magic the shit
Yes.
out of
Yes, she
everything.
can magic the shit. And that
Okay. Yeah,
face. Oh my God, that face.
she made Boromir feel like a child. Now you're talking to me, she's not a strong female character. But anyway, um, moving on from that. It's so I lamented this fact that a strong female character now correlates to can fight. And the person brings up the fact that she's lived a long time. So imagine you've lived a long time and you spend most of your time learning or creating stuff. Eventually, martial arts will come up, especially if you're living in a place like Middle Earth where there is a world ending war, you know, every 1,000 years or so, you know, and this is, you've lived through a few of them. I'm just saying that as well. She's lived through a few world ending wars.
Yes,
Um,
very true.
so her being able to fight, um, you can actually argue it. You can actually argue it very sensibly for a character like Galadriel. But I replied with, but that's not why I think she's a strong character. That's not why I think Gandalf is a strong character, because they pointed out Gandalf can fight as well. And I said, yes, but, you know, I'm not there for Gandalf's badass fighting. And really, I'm not there for Gandalf's magic either, because it's cool sometimes, but it's not, you know, it's not like, oh, I would take that magic above Harry Potter magic, which is so much more useful, you know.
Yeah,
I'm
so much
not.
more useful and looks a lot better in some
Yeah,
times.
so I'm not there for his sword fighting. I'm not there for his magic. Why am I there? I'm there because he is wise. I'm there because him as a fictional character, as an actor playing a fictional character, inspires me. Man, that's what makes a strong character, in my mind, and that is his flaws and his strengths and what is strong and what is weak within him. Because Gandalf has weaknesses. So he has fears, you know. You see it
Mm.
in the way Ian McKellen plays it in the movies, at least, that he fears some of the darkness in the world.
Yeah, he really does. He's scared of the ring as well. Like he,
Yeah,
but again, it's his wisdom that intervenes, and
mm,
then he goes, "Listen,
yeah,
I can't have the
and
ring." Not
exactly
because,
his cool
mm,
one-liners.
yes, and it's making the
So
room dark. Gandalf is a pretty cool character. I'm not gonna lie. Aragorn
yeah,
as well, but I get what you're saying. With strong female characters, and maybe that's not the argument. Maybe
yeah,
they're written different for other people, and Galadriel she is already that. But I mean, you can make the Princess Leia argument as well, I guess. Like Princess Leia wasn't written to be Princess Leia. She was just, you understand what I'm saying? She was just written as Princess Leia almost, and not to be or not to convey a certain archetype. Just it happened to
yes,
end up being a very
yeah,
good
yeah.
example
Okay.
of that.
Now
But
this,
I also feel like a lot of that has died down. A lot of the this is too woke has died down concerning the Rings of Power argument. I
yeah,
think everyone is just very excited because that imagery looks dope. That scene with the ship with the golden sails, I think all of it will be
Yeah,
very pretty. I'm excited to see what they do with the cities. Because if you go back, they don't show a lot of it in the Lord of the Rings, like the cities, but they do show like Minas Tirith and a bunch of what's
yeah.
Gondor's capital's name again? Is that
Gondors?
Gondor's capital where the king lives?
Minas, Minas Tirith.
It is that place, yeah.
Yeah,
It looks amazing in the movies as well. So I'm
yeah,
excited to see what they if they're gonna expand on that because it looks like Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings though, all of it. The same
yeah.
color scheme, the sunlight's very bright and it's dire like grasslands and but maybe that's just because they're just still shooting in the same place and they're trying to keep that aesthetic because it is again recognizably Lord of the Rings.
It's very recognizable, Lord of the Rings. But anything you make from Tolkien's estate at this point will be in the shadow of Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
Lord of the
No, no, you're absolutely
and
correct.
and it has a lot of flaws and everything, but it is award winning. I just want to remind people of that. I know it has flaws, but it did so many of the things so well. And then if you do something else, like for instance The Hobbit, because we've already had a Lord of the Rings prequel.
It's true. We have
Yeah,
had a Lord of the
we
Rings
have
prequel, but
one.
people
We
didn't like The Hobbit. The Hobbit
no,
wasn't as loved.
we keep forgetting about it.
Mm,
Yes.
forgetting, choosing, same thing, maybe. I didn't
Yeah.
hate them though. I didn't hate them at all. The third one is a bit over the top with the CGI Warcraft characters,
It didn't
but I
It
didn't hate
didn't
it.
need to be three movies. It is
It didn't
one book.
really.
It is a third of the size of Lord of the Rings. It would have been fine a third of the movie as well. But because
So
it
here's
was,
how Ian McKellen defended it. Ian McKellen said in a book you can have a single line that says there was a field with two armies on it, but in a movie that's a 20-minute scene.
like 20 minutes. Okay.
So that maybe could
Let's,
explain some of the time, but it is, I know for a fact that they as well,
yeah,
they like stretched a lot of it to
yes,
accompany some of the time that they needed for their
it's
movies. 'Cause,
bloated, man.
yes, at the very, it could have, if it was supposed to be more than just one movie, then it's not more than two.
I would
Especially
say,
not more than 2.5 hours, two movies. Because it
yeah,
is. Like, aren't those things clocking in at almost 3 hours
yes,
each?
exactly. And that's because they're trying to be like the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That they're trying to make a second one of that. And that is the hard thing about making stuff in, the shadow of Tolkien. I would say that the thing I'm dreading about Rings of Power is that it is trying to emulate Game of Thrones. That is trying to be a new Game of Thrones. That is actually more of a concern to me than
What is
a
it
lot
that
of.
concerns you? Is it the violence? Is it the nudity? Is it the very adult themes in it?
It's because
Because
Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones have fundamentally different messages, and I don't think it's useful to mix them
mm,
like
that's
this.
yeah,
I
okay.
enjoyed Game of Thrones. I enjoyed Game of Thrones imagery and things they talked about, and that's why I was very upset when they didn't stick the landing and didn't satisfy the things I cared about. Like didn't scratch those itches. So I cared about it a lot. Both of them say something, and it's a lot of contradictions in a lot of places. But you can read both, and you can take both of those opinions into your own head, and then make up your own mind. That's at least how I think about stories. Um,
I agree with you. I agree with you
yeah.
100%. Fundamentally, they are very different. They might
And
both be fantasy, but
yeah,
it's not the
and if you,
same thing.
yeah,
Okay,
and
but
if
what
you're
do you mean
trying,
influences they're pulling? Do you think it's only visual, or do you think they'll incorporate the story elements of it, like
okay,
no good guy does? Because in Lord of the Rings, it's very extremist, almost. Good guys do good things, bad guys do bad things. When in Game of Thrones, it's more sometimes good guys have to do bad things, and sometimes bad guys do good things, but not necessarily for good reasons, and so on and so on.
yeah.
Is it
Um,
that? Do you think that contradiction or that?
I think it's that.
Um,
Although, as you laying it out to me, I just realized that they also have a major theme in common, and that is that power corrupts. Because both of them have really good examples of all the powerful characters. The shit. Um,
that's true. But we're not here to talk about. Well, we'll get into it though. We can definitely next time maybe talk about Lord of the Rings. See if we get a comment asking for someone. Can you please explain what the fuck you mean by this? Because I disagree. Then we'll be back to do some
Okay.
more debates.
Okay. Yeah.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
get hate mail. That will mean
Yeah.
engagement.
Yeah. Having haters, that's when you know you
Yes,
made it.
that's a step above. I mean, no, listeners, we're both, I'm not worried.
Yeah.
Moving on, Dungeons and Dragons. So I know Dungeons and Dragons means a lot to you, as it does to all the people that partake in D&D Classic. And now with Stranger Things, do you think some of this Dungeons and Dragons, Stranger Things might do it some good? Because Stranger Things really caused a revive in D&D. I think a lot of people who watch that show went, I wonder if that's any
You,
fun. And
you
they
do
played
know.
some.
You do know there is a Stranger Things starter set officially
Ah, of
released
course there is.
by the company Wizards of the Coast. There's also a Rick and Morty starter set, just so you know. Okay, but
That is interesting. Would you play Rick and Morty D&D? Do you think that could be any fun?
no, no, I would not.
No,
I
no,
would
me
also
neither.
not play Stranger Things. D&D. I don't even play D&D's D&D.
That's true. You
Uh,
only play your
uh,
own games.
so, so of the iconic characters, of monsters I've used in the trailer. Okay, because I actually watched it and I tried to name the creatures, and I'm actually not too bad of it. Some of the dragony things that don't look like proper dragons, I'm not sure where they fall into, kind of thing. But the rest of the stuff, I was like, yeah, that's an owlbear, not just an owlbear. That is a druid with an owlbear beast shape. Let me let you know. I know she's class druid. They have a druid. They have a rogue. They have a bard, and they have a fighter. He might be a paladin though, because his sword blows for a little bit, but I'm not
Okay.
sure. Yeah,
But you
but
see, that's what I mean with D&D specifically. That's high, high fantasy, bro. Going into that movie, you need some background, I think. Otherwise, you won't really appreciate. And I'm
I
sure it'll
think
be a romp. I think they're going to lean into the comedy.
yes,
Likes there will be chock and block full of jokes. But remember the Warcraft movie? Because I think I'm the only one that liked the Warcraft movie, as
I
far as I
like
can see.
it.
But that also, it was expensive. It looked good. I think it was a great fantasy story set in a great fantasy world. And that movie bombed hard. No one liked it.
Okay, but this is another fun thing about it, because on the one side you have Warcraft, which is ages of lore. Okay, like massive amounts of it.
True.
Like iconic characters as well, but ages of lore. And then you have Dungeons and Dragons on the other side that have iconic characters and archetypes, but no lore. Okay, like
Do you
no
think
lore necessary to tell a story in Dungeons and Dragons, because it's incredibly flexible lore. That's why it works for it. Because I know the way I DM, I don't use their lore. I just use their monsters, and then I
Mm.
say, make up my own story for why that monster is there. Sometimes I won't allow a monster in my world because it's too stupid. I can't get a proper explanation for it. The mimic. I
the mimic? Is that
the
in D&D? Because I feel is that a thing
yeah,
from is it?
yeah.
So it's not
So
a dragon. It's not a Dark Souls thing first. There was a
no, no,
D&D
no,
thing
no, no.
first.
That's the oh, Dark Souls. Um, Dark Souls has the opinion that this is how D&D should be played. Just so you know, it is inspired by Dungeons and Dragons,
Yeah, that
somewhat.
actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Yes, 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 yes. Um,
Okay.
yeah, no, but
So you think it'll be based on that? You think it'll be approachable by mainstream audiences for the fact that there's you don't have to know a lot of things. If you have a basic idea of what a dragon is, then you'll
yes,
be good to go. Is that what you're saying?
yeah. So there's going to be crazy fantasy monsters in your face and everything.
Mhm.
And that's just now from the trailer. I don't know how much time they spent on explaining everything. I hope it's not a lot, because you really don't need to explain a lot of things. A lot of things will make sense to your audience, especially with how gaming literate everyone is. Everyone has seen something from somewhere else. You bringing the mimic to me. There's a mimic in the trailer, actually. There's a mimic in
Yeah,
the trailer.
there is a
Yeah,
mimic in the trailer.
yes.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. Lots and lots more people are gaming at an older age, even. So I think some
Yes.
of those things won't be as foreign as, say, like if you go back, you made this movie 20 years ago, people go, I understood nothing. I don't know what none of that is. It's just
Yeah.
unrealistic. I hate it.
See, if you tell an average person our age these days that it is a bard, a rogue, a fighter, and a druid, they will kind of have an idea of what powers or what
At the very
things they can.
least, they'll go, aren't those Diablo 2 characters? And you'll go, yeah,
Yes,
sort of.
yeah, exactly. So the main guy is a bard, and I know that just because he is the guy that makes the plans, but he also plays the lutes. And I'm like, aha, the if you pitch a party, bard, rogue, um, druid to me, I know there's going to be a lot of chaos. And then if you add a fighter, I know there's going to be a lot of punch in that chaos. But if you add a paladin to that mix, I'm like, this is going to be crazy. I had all these hooligans and a paladin. It's going to be insane.
That's what we want. That's what we want from films. We
Yeah.
want them to be crazy with satisfying ends.
It looks,
Ultimately.
it looks like a lot of fun. I think of all the trailers except that the other one that we'll bring up now. I'm most excited for Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I can't wait for it.
I think we can basically, based on what we just said, also agree that Dungeons and Dragons might be the best place to set a interconnected universe in, if that's what they're going for. Like the subtitle kind of alludes to the fact that the sequel could be something completely different. It could be Dungeons and Dragons, pirates or whatever. Because as you said, Dungeons and Dragons includes all of it. So do you think it'll work based on that? Maybe an interconnected universe based in these random things? Because it just includes everything. Maybe we need it to be a little bit more. Because we'll get to it in a second. I know exactly what trailer you're going to talk about, and I want to say some things about that as well. But interconnected universes with stories within them, like if we're doing these movies, then Dungeons and Dragons might be the best place to do, but it might also be the worst place to do it because there's nothing to refer it to. Like what makes the MCU or what made the MCU so successful is they, especially in Phase 1, they were just throwing things at the wall. Here's a map with Wakanda on it. Here's a prototype shield. Here's a box with a name on it from something else, and then the fans can go, "Oh, this is this and this and this and this." But if you can't do that with Dungeons and Dragons, then maybe that's no fun. You get what I'm saying? Like maybe there's nothing to go back. If they do enough within the movie to still have discussion topics, but the fact that 'cause even with Warcraft, you could. Because what I especially liked about the Warcraft movie is they don't say that they say that wizard's name like a few times before the first like proper reveal of the character he's going to become, and it's inspired because you, the fan, knows this guy is maybe no one know now, but he becomes like this massively powerful magician or whatever. We know the baby becomes Thrall. You understand what I'm saying? Like if you introduce a baby in Dungeons and Dragons, everyone's going, that's just a baby. Man. That baby means nothing.
But that baby only means to me what you have thus far told me it means.
Exactly. And it could end up meaning nothing, and then that also is a bit of a problem. So you don't think like payoff for those fan recognizable things, especially in something like D&D, which has a lot of fans, and again is a pretty niche thing. I think akin to metal music, like you wouldn't, unless you're actively a part of that community, you wouldn't know much about
I
it.
hear you. I hear you in that most people recognize like terms and things from D&D because of our gamer culture, but I don't think. Yeah, I've seen it many times. You put a gamer down to D&D, and they do. It takes them a bit to get into it. It is for most people playing Dungeons and Dragons kind of outside their comfort zone, and that's just for a lot of people. Confident people I've seen in my life come to my table, then they just flounder around because they don't know what's going on. Because there's a little trick to it, right? But even
Yes, definitely.
I've also seen all these people get into it, and create wonderful stories. So this is the weird thing about Dungeons and Dragons, or slapping it on your movie, is that Dungeons and Dragons mean different things for different people because different people do different things with it. That's how you built it. That's how you've made it. It's at the heart of Dungeons and Dragons as an experience is that you and your group will have a unique experience because you are unique people bringing new perspectives to the story at a unique time.
Do you think that will necessarily be a negative point towards the movie because now we're giving you an experience? Because that makes a lot of sense to me. Actually, that makes like there are people you've told me about D&D games you've played that have nothing to do with any combat. It's a guy building a town, and it takes a year, and everyone loves it. They're sitting around the table talking about this town for 8-9 hours at an end or whatever. And
Okay,
that's
no,
not. So
so
is that not what you mean?
no, so kind of what I mean. So that guy that I built the town with, we spent 8 or 9 hours building the town. It's something I enjoyed a lot. It's something he enjoyed a lot. We both had the forethought not to invite anyone else to that particular session because not everyone enjoys it. So,
Interesting.
and that's
But
part of
still,
what I'm
though, do
talking.
you think giving a strict narrative, saying, "Here's your freaking D&D, and you get these characters, and this is their skill set, and this is what they're doing, and this is their adventure," don't you think? You don't foresee it being a problem? You think the general fan base will be able to go, "It's just another D&D adventure. It means nothing," ultimately, and then the mainstream audience will go, "That was a pretty entertaining Chris Pine leading movie," because they yes, they got
You look,
Chris Pine, didn't they?
yes, he sells it to me. I want to watch it.
Yeah, I was a dig Chris
Um,
Pine, but I think he
do
does that
you,
cocky, confident guy real
yeah.
well.
Do you know Critical Role? They've gone a little bit official recently with an animation. You
I'm
know,
not
do you know?
familiar. No.
Okay, so Critical Role is actually a group of voice actors. You will recognize the voices from a lot of animated things you've done through the years or heard through the years
Okay.
when you get into it. One of my favorites is Liam O'Brien, who voices War in Darksiders. He's part of
Ooh.
this group as well. But so we have these group of voice actors playing Dungeons and Dragons. Under Matt Mercer, and an excellent dungeon master, excellent group of people because already they know acting, they know how to climb into a character and sell that character and play off of someone else playing a character. So it's really entertaining. But
Check it out.
just you guys sitting around the table and they're being recorded and they're just having, a D&D game. Nothing crazy going on or anything like that. They got a major following and their adventures in this game was animated into a story because people love the story.
That's pretty cool. I love
I
it when
think if
fans get
you,
together and do things like that, bro. I
yeah,
think it's so cool.
no, it's an official thing. There's some controversy because Matt Mercer can't voice all his characters because not all his characters are white, which is
Oh,
interesting. But yes, we'll leave it at that. But that is a good way to approach it. It isn't Dungeons and Dragons. It is Vox Machina is the animation. And it's not even the only campaign they ran. So it's not Critical Role, it's Vox Machina. It's this particular D&D story that's really, really good.
okay.
And I think if you approach it with that, it will be fine. You can use the archetypes and Dungeons and Dragons and the creatures and everything because everything is also at this point in Dungeons and Dragons. Name a
Yeah, it's pretty all
mythological
inclusive. Yeah, I
creature,
know it. All the
fantasy
gods,
creature.
all of
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
because they're giving you all these tools to tell your story with. So if you do a movie like this, you can just tell a good kooky fantasy story, I guess, and get backing for it, which is an interesting mix today. You don't have to meet fan expectations because nobody gives a shit about your character because we've never seen him before. We just know he's a bard. So as long as his powers, kind of,
He just has to sing a song and make a few jokes, and that's
yes,
about it. Yeah, if he
if
does those
that's
things
correct,
successfully,
yes,
then
there's nothing else that can fade me because I don't know anything about this character. So they've got the little sweet spot here between having an IP and also having expectations for it. So that's excellent. Eh? That's genius. We'll see because as you've mentioned, I've gotten my hopes up for a fantasy series since I've been, 6, and I've been hurt many, many times.
many,
So
many times indeed. Do you
many
remember the
times.
last Airbender? I won't talk about it. Don't make me.
The what?
The last Airbender.
Or the animated series done by Nickelodeon. That was
No.
beautiful.
Yeah, that thing
I don't know
gorgeous.
I don't know what
That's
else.
the only example
Oh,
of it.
oh,
Yeah,
uh,
cheers. No, there is.
there
But
is no
yeah,
live
yes.
action in Bus
Yes,
Insane.
no, it can't be done. It shan't be done.
Shan't be done.
So moving
I
on
would
to
like
mm,
a remaster of Nickelodeon's animated series.
would actually dig
Avatar.
that too. That's
Well,
very cool, bro.
yes.
Speaking of though, if you do you think if they were to do that now today, if we because in our age of reboots and renews, we definitely deserve a live action Airbender movie in the vein of what the show was, because the show is. The show is just it speaks for itself. Not only is Aang the protagonist, the badass and fleshed out, but all the side characters. Toph being my personal favorite. I think Toph is just the coolest character.
And
Do
then
you think if they did it today, it would be a lot better now, post MCU and all?
like live action,
Yeah,
we deserve not having a live action.
yeah, maybe.
I
Or
believe we
maybe
deserve nice things, so I don't think we need. No,
we so
see,
lucky. You're absolutely
I,
correct.
you
Give us
know,
a remastered TV show. That would be
yeah,
cool.
it's an unfair question to ask me. I love animated more than I love live action. If they could make and more live action things animated, I would be happier in general, I think.
Or maybe you're
So
onto something there, because animation does allow for more storytelling. But we'll
it,
get into that as well, because I want to talk to you about anime at some point. We'll see if
okay,
anyone is interested, and we'll get to it. Moving on
okay.
to franchises who don't have a team and is still very recognizable, we got our second last trailers. Oh, Mr. Good old John Wick himself, bro.
Oh, Keanu. Oh my
Keanu's,
word!
Keanu's
You,
carrying his years quite well. I see he doesn't do any of the running anymore, but he does all the action.
who needs running? You can shoot people from
Running.
far away. You don't need to run. It's
You
okay.
don't, you're absolutely correct. And you can throw a knife across a room, so he's got that sorted as well. He doesn't
Does
need
he
to run
block
to you.
bullets with a katana as well? Like,
It looks like he's
I
gonna, yeah.
can't wait. Okay, I don't even care how little the plot is in that movie. I just want to see that Keanu cool, man.
Do you think there'll be a scene where it cuts a bullet in half? Because we know for a fact you can teleport through a crowd. Then when that Asian guy did it, they can do that Assassin's Creed thing or like Shadow Monsterish. Okay, but
we,
here's what I want to
if,
say about the John Wick movies, just
yeah,
before you get too into it. So John Wick 1 ends with him being severely wounded, almost dead. Correct?
yeah.
But he still like overcame and what. And then in John Wick 2, he gets a little bit hurt, but not really. It ends up fine. John Wick 3, all of it is fine except for the ending where he gets thrown off a roof and then he's still fine.
Of
And now we
cutting
get John Wick 4,
cutting
which
off his finger, wandering in the desert.
yeah, but 100% fine. Like he's pretty immortal by now. Do you think that? Because don't get me wrong, I love the John Wick movies. I love the cinematography. I love the ideology behind the filmmaking because it's basically like course running, but instead of targets, there are actual people, and it looks all cool and it's very technical and nothing is CGI'd. Like those guns work the way they work in the movie and blah 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 and all of that. But John Wick as a character, do you think he can still hold a movie by himself? Because here's the thing about the John Wick universe, that universe specifically is prime for an interconnected universe. There's just so much potential. You can have an entire movie that's just about the kill squad that the table sends. You know those guys who come out of the shadows with only knives and then
Oh
they
yeah.
murder everyone. You can make a whole movie just about that. But we're still only getting John Wick adventures. Do you think it's sustainable? Like at some point, because I have what I want from like a John Wick movie, an ending almost. Like I've told you about it as well. I think they should introduce a secondary character, but we'll get into it. Do you think it's sustainable? Do you think it'll still be as good? Do you think this movie, because it's also been like a while since the last one, do you think it's still in the public consciousness? Because we've had loads of things in between. We've had Extraction, which was great. You know what I'm
Um,
saying? Do you think John Wick, do you think this will do as well? Because not even
I,
Thor 4 did well. Like it's not doing well. You get what I'm
okay,
saying?
but you know, there's a difference between Thor and John Wick, and that's that they don't have Keanu Reeves in it. Who are you gonna choose as the heir of Keanu Cool? He carries that movie. What are you talking about?
No, he does. He does. But I just don't know if watching the same guy, because why did Die Hard work? That's a trick question. It didn't work because by the time number 5 rolled around, we were all like, oh, whatever the fuck, man. Who cares? What is he gonna do this time?
Yeah, and
He's gonna
why
drive a car through a
why
helicopter. Okay.
and why can you still make 007? the opposite
That's a
direction.
very counterpoint. Why can you still make 007s?
Because it's not tied to the actor. It's not even tied to being James Bond. It's just 007. I think that's like the rhetoric they used for the most recent one, which has uh, uh, a female, a lady person, one of
Hmm.
those.
Yeah,
Um,
because technically James
yeah,
Bond
because
isn't 007 in that movie. Yeah, you're
yeah,
right.
you can kick ass and take names, you can get the job, right? So,
Hmm.
not that I've actually watched it or any James Bond 007. I'm talking out of my ass. I'm
No,
just
but those movies are whatever is popular. So you'll probably, if you
yeah.
guess, you'll still get like half of it right. Because those movies really are like the James Bond movies are just a reflection of whatever is popular in cinema at the time. Like we got the Daniel Craig ones off the cuff of the Dark Knight, and you can see it. They even asked Christopher Nolan after the Dark Knight if he wouldn't do the Daniel Craig one, and he was like, "Nah." But then he made Tenet anyway because I think he's a little bit of a dick. Whatever. So I
Is
get what you're saying, but but so you think John Wick can go for it? Because I know Keanu said he'll do John Wick till he dies. He
is
doesn't.
it?
Yeah, he
Okay,
said he'll do it
no.
until people
I
go no more John Wick.
I think there should be a stop
I also
point
think there should be a
to
stop.
it.
Point, yeah.
Yeah, this is fun for another reason because John Wick isn't a comic book. He's not a superhero. He's not a
Slight correction there, Marbury. It is a
novel.
comic book. John
I,
Wick is based off a graphic novel.
I didn't know that. Okay, so how long does the graphic novel run? Or
Oh
we
no, I don't think it's. I don't think it's anything past like one graphic novel. But again, I
okay,
don't know. I don't
okay.
know if it's
So
just.
we
It's not
might
like
be.
not like comics. It's not like there's a weekly issue or whatever. Um,
Yeah. No, I hear what
again, I
you're
don't know.
saying.
If you know, put it in the comments, please. You're
Yes.
listening to
Okay.
this. Get back
Yeah.
to us.
If it's a single graphic novel and they're still busy with it, not like the first movie was the graphic novel just milking this cow. I'm talking about the story of the graphic novel isn't finished yet till the end of the graphic novel. Okay, then stop. Okay, that is. It seems to me the proper way for doing it. If the first one is the graphic novel and they've already extended it, um, I don't know how it worked. The first one is my favorite. It's the
Yeah.
same.
Well,
Same
for me, it's the second one. I like the second one the most. I think that
ah,
movie is badass.
the second one is good, especially if you think about it in terms of the first one. Have you ever seen movies with Mikey?
Movies with?
Mikey,
What is that?
Mikey. It's like Mike.
No, I haven't.
It's a YouTube guy. I'm not sure how
Oh,
active he is these days, but he had like an intense series about John Wick and what each one, or not what each one means, but the symbols in the story of each one. So the first one,
do you mean like John Wick 1 is a Shakespearean tale and
no,
John,
it's like that, but the first one is about gods. So different characters represent different gods, and then John Wick represents the boogeyman still, and he's dismantling the mythology. And the second one, um, it's not a opera anymore, so it isn't. Uh, yeah, so it's not about the gods anymore. We're moving to video games, so it's going to be a video game experience, everything like that.
okay. Yeah,
And
that feels very fair because John Wick
yeah,
2 is very video gamey from the
yeah,
get-go. Like it
and
doesn't
then
stop. There's an
when we
opening level and everything.
Yeah, and then we get to Parabellum, which means for war, and then it's he in the story. There's a lot about you can't do this forever, and when are you gonna stop and stuff like that. And he's like folding the movie on itself, talking about why is there a third sequel or why is there a third movie, a second sequel for John Wick. Um, how
Hmm.
long can you go with this and everything? So that is interesting. That's real interesting. That makes me think that the line they say, no, nobody can kill everybody, not even you, makes me think that John Wick will eventually kill everybody.
Do you think he'll die? Do you think they'll do it? Keanu doesn't die, bro. Keanu has never died in a movie.
No,
Not
he's
even.
not gonna die. He's gonna kill everybody. That's what I
Oh,
mean.
you think it's gonna go all the way? They'll like, here's the
Yeah,
challenge, and John Wick will
Keanu,
get over it.
if Keanu dies, it is in a very um, cool way. Keanu cool, like
Be?
Jesus. Okay, that's
Yeah,
how he died.
like Jesus indeed.
Okay. Just
On a stick for truth and justice. I hear you. Definitely.
I'm
All right,
I
so you're in the band, you're in the camp. John Wick can go forever. You'll pay for it. You don't mind.
yes,
John
I
Wick
don't know.
forever. Okay.
Make it look pristine. I'm there. I'm there.
Well, as long as they keep up the innovative fight scenes, and by the trailer, it does look like that's not going anywhere. Like they really do put a lot of thought
So
into
cool.
all of them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not like because I feel the same way about the MCU. I think because I talked to my girlfriend the other day, and I was like, "Yo, it's exciting at some point when we have kids, if we ever have one. That's still like 10 years from. Like if we have one kid
Mm.
now today, then 10 years from now, I'll start watching the MCU movies with him from scratch, and that's very cool. But if they never stop with the MCU, then I'm not sure that I'll do that. It's not going to be like Star Wars, like your kids are now grown. Now you watch Star Wars with your kids because it's a piece of your childhood. If the MCU is still up and going by that time, it'll just be whatever. You get what I'm saying? Like it has to end for it to be something forever. Because the first three phases of Marvel was really, really good. And then when they didn't end Endgame with an ending, because they should have concluded Endgame with an ending, it should have been done. And no ellipses, nothing.
Mhm.
Ever since then, it's just been diminishing returns. But you don't think John Wick is in danger of that at all?
Of course it is. Of course it is. It should
Mm.
stop at some point. I don't think you should replace someone in the John Wick role, like the actor, and then just keep going after Keanu Reeves because it does do a lot of the work for me. That's the same thing. Like if if there's no Johnny Depp in your Pirates of the Caribbean, what are you doing? Really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
but
We go to that for a
I,
specific character. Maybe that's
I
why
don't.
they can't break. Maybe that's why there has to be John Wick all the time because we're going for Keanu. It's absolutely correct.
I,
We're watching John Wick for Keanu. It's true.
yeah,
So even if you can't introduce like a new up and coming guy who John Wick mentors him for a little bit and then for the rest of the movies it's just him, it won't work. But it will
I
end. I'm pretty sure it will end at some point. Because Keanu is like you won't be able to do those stunts and stuff forever. And
you
if you
can't
get
have
a
AI. He is aging. Hey,
he
he
is
is.
yeah, I mean what is let's check. What is he now? But he looks great though, don't get me wrong. He looked
Yeah.
good for however old he is. Keanu Reeves. Yo, yes, this is actually surprising. Keanu Reeves at present is 57 years old.
Goodness.
Yeah, that's a lot. I knew he was in his 50s. I didn't know he was upper. He is also Lebanon. Did you know that? Wasn't he? Isn't he Canadian? Isn't Keanu Reeves Canadian? Pretty sure he's
I don't know.
Canadian.
I don't know.
He's 1.86 meters long. Yes, a tall motherfucker.
1 point.
86.
Hey, I'm taller than Keanu Reeves.
Are you taller than Keanu Reeves?
I'm taller
Oh,
than.
you also tall motherfuckers too.
Hey.
But yeah, nonetheless, I'm still very excited for John Wick 4. Been excited for this for a while now, actually. They are good. They are really good. And for R-rated movies to bring in that kind of bucks, it's
Mm,
unheard of.
it's great. It's great. I do like it. I do like those. Yeah. That's the last trailer is Shazam.
That's the one I didn't see. So I guess
Oh
everyone's
yeah.
back. Everyone's back Shazamming it.
Everybody's like Shazamming it. They kind of like have like a little micro team in the thing,
Okay.
and he's trying to keep everyone together, but they are all doing their own thing and leading their own lives. And then I can't remember what the main villain's actress's name is, but I'm pretty sure Lucy Liu is also one of the villains. Magic villains come and they come threaten our heroes, and they have to learn to fight together. It
And
looks
hijinks ensue.
Yes, it's actually pretty funny though. They're leaning into the humor. They start with a joke where he's trying to place himself in the Justice League because they already have a guy in a red uniform with a lightning bolt. Oh, I think my can you hear me still?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, bro.
Okay, I think my one thing went. Um, so
Oh no, you gone. Okay, so we seem to be experiencing some technical difficulties. I think we'll just wrap it up here. Thanks everybody for joining us here for our first ever episode. Please check the link in the description below for our Patreon page if you'd like to support us, and we'll see you next week.